Most of us picture death like a light bulb going out. The bulb breaks, the light vanishes, the story ends. This image seems logical, but it carries a deep, quiet fear of complete annihilation. But what if, from the very beginning, the light bulb was the wrong metaphor? The Buddha didn't ask, "What goes on after death?" Instead, he invites us to ask a more profound question. What is consciousness really in this very moment? Instead of a light bulb, ancient wisdom offers a different image. A river. A river is not a fixed object. It is a flow, and that flow doesn't stop when the riverbed beneath it changes. Imagine the story of a woman who always believed that her memories and identity were stored in her brain, like files on a computer. But then her husband, after an accident, lost a large part of his memory. He didn't remember her name, didn't remember the life they had built together. And yet as she sat beside him, holding his hand, she could still feel the familiar gentleness in his eyes, still see the traits of the person she fell in love with. She began to ask herself a profound question. If the memories and the data can be lost, but the person still seems to be here, then what is the true nature of a human being? Her question is our question. The comparison here is between the common physicalist view, that consciousness is just a byproduct of brain activity, and the Buddhist perspective, which sees consciousness as a continuous process, dependent on conditions to manifest, much like a flame depends on fuel to burn. This video isn't about an unchanging soul, but about a dynamic and mysterious continuity. To understand where the river flows, we must first understand the nature of the stream itself. Let's begin with the first foundation, a truth that will completely change the way you see your very self. If you are not a fixed object, then what are you? The Buddha's answer to this question can change everything we think we know about personal identity. In a scripture, the Buddha corrected a monk named Sati, who believed that a fixed consciousness traveled from one life to the next. The Buddha taught him decisively, apart from conditions, there is no arising of consciousness. In other words, consciousness doesn't exist on its own. It's an event, and the continuous stream of these mental events is called citta santana, the stream of mind. To understand this practically, just analyze an ordinary day. In the morning, you wake up feeling refreshed and optimistic, but an unexpected work email arrives, making you anxious and irritable. The you of this moment is completely different from the you of an hour ago. By noon, when the problem is solved, you feel a sense of relief. How many times has your state of you changed in just a few hours? There is no fixed you standing behind all of this, experiencing it. There is only a flow of mental states, each one conditioning the next to arise. The most common mistake here is to confuse the concept of not-self, or anatta, with nothingness. People fear that if there is no fixed self, then there is nothing at all. But the lesson here is the opposite. Not-self doesn't deny your existence. It points out that you are a living process, a symphony of ever-changing conditions, not a static statue. Understanding this is the first step toward letting go of the burden of defending a self that never really existed in the first place. It frees us from being defined by our past. Your thoughts yesterday are not you. Your anxious feelings right now are not you. They are just waves that come and go in the great river of the mind. And when you learn not to identify with every single wave, you find a profound peace right in the middle of the flow. If the mind is a river, then what makes it flow? The answer is an energy that you are generating in every single moment of your life. Intention. The Buddha explained profoundly that karma is nothing other than intention, or satana. He taught, "It is intention that I call karma." Imagine your mind as a garden. Every single intention, no matter how small, is a seed being planted. An intention to help someone plants a seed of kindness. An intention to speak a critical word plants a seed of resentment. These seeds create tendencies, shaping our inner landscape. Consider the parallel story of two people facing the same financial hardship. The first person every day nurtures intentions of resentment and blame for his circumstances and for others. Gradually, his world becomes darker, his relationships become strained, and his mind is always heavy, leaving him with no energy to find a solution. The second person, though in the same situation, chooses to nurture intentions of patience, self-responsibility, and actively seeking small solutions. Even though her external circumstances don't change immediately, her inner world becomes brighter and stronger. It is this positive energy that helps her see opportunities that the other person cannot. The most common mistake is to see karma as a predetermined fate, or as a system of reward and punishment imposed by an external force. The real lesson is this: karma is a natural psychological law of cause and effect. We are both the inheritors of the seeds planted in the past, and the gardeners with full power to choose which seeds to plant for the future, right in this present moment. It is the quality of these daily intentions that creates the current, creating the invisible momentum that will continue to carry the stream of mind forward, beyond the boundaries of a single lifetime. If there is no unchanging soul, then what exactly continues after death? The answer is as elegant as it is profound. To explain this, the ancient Buddhist scripture, the Milinda Panya, used a classic metaphor: the image of a candle. Imagine you use a lit candle to light another candle, and then you extinguish the first. The question is the flame on the second candle the same as the flame on the first? Not exactly, but is it completely different? No, not that either. The second flame is entirely dependent on the first. No substance of the flame is transferred, but there is an unbroken continuity of cause and effect. This is exactly how the transition of consciousness happens. The final moment of consciousness in this life conditions the arising of the first moment of consciousness in the next. Nothing physical or permanent passes over, but the process itself continues without a break. It is a transmission of conditions, not of a self. That is why the Buddha used the phrase not the same and not another. Nakaso, naka anyo. The one who is reborn is not identical to the one who has passed, because all physical and mental elements have changed, but neither is it a completely separate being, because the stream of karmic causes continues. The main force that pulls this stream forward is craving, tanha, the thirst to exist, to become. It's like an invisible magnet, pulling the stream of consciousness toward a new set of conditions, a new form. To illustrate this idea of a continuing stream of information and tendencies, consider the cases documented by Dr. Ian Stevenson. One of the most famous stories is about a young boy in India who, from a very young age, remembered details of a family and a village he had never been to. He spoke of his wife and children, describing secret details about the house and the family business that only the deceased man of that family would have known. When he was taken to that village, the boy recognized relatives and places with stunning accuracy. This story isn't used to prove anything scientifically, but to suggest the possibility of a stream of consciousness carrying deep imprints and tendencies that can continue from one life to the next. What's important here is to distinguish the Buddhist concept of rebirth from the idea of reincarnation found in many other traditions. Reincarnation often implies an unchanging soul, a fixed entity that moves from one body to another like a person changing clothes. Rebirth in Buddhism, on the other hand, is like one wave giving rise to the next. The second wave is not the first wave, but it is created from the very energy of the wave that came before it. The identity is not in the form, but in the continuity of conditions. Perhaps you're thinking, this is fascinating, but what does science have to say about it? You'd be surprised to learn how the furthest edges of science are beginning to touch upon these ancient ideas. Of course, the mainstream scientific view is that consciousness is a product of the brain. When the brain stops, consciousness ends. But even within the scientific community, there are major unanswered questions. One of them is called the hard problem of consciousness, the question of why the electrochemical activity in our neurons should produce the subjective experience of the color red, the taste of sweetness, or the feeling of loving someone. To this day, No scientific model can fully explain this mystery. And it is in this space of mystery that certain phenomena stand out, not as undeniable proof, but as provocative, open questions. Consider near-death experiences. It's not just stories of seeing a light. Some cases document what researchers call veridical perception. Imagine a patient, clinically declared dead on an operating table, who later revives and accurately describes an unusual surgical instrument that was left on a high shelf in the room, a detail they could not possibly have seen with their ordinary senses. Cases like these directly challenge the assumption that consciousness is completely extinguished when the brain ceases to function. The path of science is to observe the external world. The path of the Buddha is to observe the internal world. Both are rigorous and systematic methods of investigating reality. However, the Buddha anticipated this skepticism. In the Kalama Sutta, he spoke to people who were confused by too many conflicting teachings. He did not say, "Believe me." Instead, he offered a piece of advice that is astonishingly practical and profound. He said, "Investigate for yourself. Let go of what is unwholesome and practice what is wholesome. Live a life of integrity, of kindness, of mindfulness. If there is another life, these actions will bear good fruit. And if there is not, you will still have lived a life of peace right here and now, without regret, without resentment, and without delusion." This is a no-lose proposition. It shows that the focus of this path is not to win an argument about the afterlife, but to live a good life right here, with care, with attention, and with compassion. What if death isn't an instant off switch, but a journey through a landscape made entirely of your own mind? The ancient Tibetan masters created a map for this very journey. In the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there is a concept called the bardo, or the in-between state, a transitional phase between death and a new life. This is not a physical place, but a profound psychological state where the stream of mind, no longer anchored by the physical senses, is completely liberated. Imagine it like an extremely vivid and powerful dream. In the bardo state, the boundary between thought and reality becomes thin. Whatever you think, whatever fears or hopes you hold, can instantly manifest as an experience. And the map for this journey is the famous book, the Bardo Thodol, also known in the West as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. But this is not a magical book about the afterlife. The best way to understand it is as a profound psychological map. The book describes that, in the bardo state, the deepest karmic imprints in our mind will rise up and project outwards as experiences of brilliant lights, deafening sounds, and visions of peaceful or wrathful deities. The core instruction of the Book of the Dead is repeated with unwavering consistency. Recognize that all of these experiences, whether beautiful or terrifying, are merely the projections of your own mind. They have no external reality. The brilliant light is the light of your own enlightened nature. The terrifying deities are the untransformed corners and fears of your own psyche. The advice is always, recognize this, and you will be liberated. The lesson here has an incredibly practical meaning for our life right now. The way we train our mind now is the most important preparation for that journey. If in this life we are used to running away from our difficult emotions, used to being carried away by negative thoughts, then in the bardo state, we will also run away from the projections of our own mind. But on the contrary, if right now we practice observing our thoughts and emotions with mindfulness, without judgment, without identifying with them, then we are training the core skill to be able to recognize the phenomena in the bardo as mere expressions of the mind. Every moment you sit quietly and observe your mind, you are not just finding peace in the present. You are preparing for the greatest journey of all. We spend our lives buying insurance for our cars and our homes. But what about ensuring the single most important transition we will ever have to face? This is the art of a skillful death. The ancient Stoics practiced memento mori, remembering death, to live a better life. The Buddha also taught this, but with a deeper purpose as well, to prepare for a better death. One of the most powerful practices is called maranasati, or mindfulness of death. This might sound morbid, but its purpose is the complete opposite. To reflect regularly on the fact that this life is finite is not to be consumed by fear, but to awaken with a profound appreciation for every precious moment we have. It urges us to live fully and with intention. You can practice this very gently. Every night before you go to sleep, take 1 minute to reflect on the fact that this day could have been your last. Did you live fully? Is there anything you need to forgive or a word of love you need to speak? This practice helps to release our attachments to trivial things and to focus on what truly matters. Alongside this, meditation and the cultivation of a loving heart play a crucial role. The practice of meditation helps to train the mind to be stable and calm amidst turmoil. This is an invaluable skill when we have to face the physical pain and mental fear of the dying process. A mind that is accustomed to stillness is less likely to be carried away by panic. Similarly, the practice of metta, or unconditional loving kindness, helps to create a positive and warm state of mind. In Buddhist teachings, the final thought moment before death is considered to have an incredibly powerful directive force. A mind that has been tamed in kindness is much more likely to produce a peaceful final intention, and it is that very intention that will be the wind that guides the boat of our consciousness to a peaceful shore. There are many stories told of meditation masters and long-time practitioners who face death not with terror, but with a strange and beautiful serenity. They pass away with awareness, in peace, with a clear mind until the very last breath, not only liberating themselves, but also becoming a source of endless inspiration for those they leave behind. The lesson here is this: the preparation for death is not something to be put off until we are old. Every moment you practice mindfulness, every act of kindness you offer, every word of love you share is a rehearsal. You are preparing for that most important moment, not by worrying about the future, but by living fully and wholesomely in this very present moment. The journey we have taken together, from facing the fear of death as annihilation, to understanding it as a transition in a ceaseless stream of consciousness, and finally, to learning how to prepare for that journey itself. But all of this leads us to one final and most important question. What is the ultimate purpose? The biggest mistake that many people make is to think that the goal of Buddhism is to accumulate good karma for a better next life, a rebirth in a more pleasant realm. But this is only a temporary comfort. The Buddha pointed to a path that is far more profound and radical. He said that the entire cycle of birth, aging, sickness, and death, no matter what realm it occurs in, still contains the seed of suffering. He once used a powerful image. The tears you have shed in this long journey of wanderings are more than the water in the 4 great oceans. Therefore, the ultimate goal is not to find a better destination within the cycle. The goal is to step out of the cycle entirely. That is liberation, which is called nirvana or nibbana. The word nirvana means to extinguish, like a flame gently going out. But what is extinguished is not yourself, because there was no fixed self to be extinguished in the first place. What is extinguished is the fire of greed, hatred, and delusion, the very energies that have kept the wheel of suffering turning. Nirvana is not annihilation. It is the ultimate peace, the cessation of all inner conflict. Understanding this does not make us indifferent to our present life. On the contrary, it gives it a profound meaning and a quiet urgency. It frees us from the fear of death and empowers us to live a life of purpose and compassion right here and now. Every moment becomes an opportunity to let go of a little craving, to cultivate a little kindness, to live more mindfully. Your preparation for the greatest journey does not begin by worrying about the distant future, but by bringing a little mindfulness and kindness into this very present moment. The last teaching that the Buddha left for the world did not speak of other worlds. He spoke of this very moment. He said, "All conditioned things are subject to decay. Strive on with mindfulness. This is the final message. The river continues to flow, but it does not have to carry us away blindly. We can awaken within the stream. We can touch something beyond it. And we can live, not merely as passengers tossed about by the current, but as beings capable of liberating ourselves.